If you're of a certain age, you may remember playing video games at home on one of these, an Atari Video Computer System, also known as the Atari 2600. Originally released in 1977 and run through the 80s and up to the early 90s, this was how many kids of my generation used to play video games at home. But you may have also received one of these this holiday season, an Atari 2600 Plus. As you can see, it's significantly smaller, but it still packs all the nostalgic punch of the original 2600. Hi everyone, I'm Alan Gracia, and in this episode, let's take a quick look at the Atari 2600 and how it stacks up with the 2600 Plus. Okay, so here we have the original Atari 2600, also known as the Video Computer System prior to November 1982, and the Atari 2600 Plus. The two units look very similar to each other. However, the guts of these two machines are incredibly different. This is a late run Atari 2600, so you notice a couple things that are different. The one I had as a kid looked exactly like the 2600 Plus, where it had the wood grain finish here in the front, and there was the orange pinstriping on the outline here for where the controls and the cartridges go. The original 1977 video computer system, before it was renamed the 2600, looked similar to the 2600 Plus, except it had two extra buttons, one on each side of the cartridge slot for various settings and things. So they look very similar. Obviously, Atari, or the company that owns the Atari brand these days, was going for, obviously, the nostalgia factor. We've seen lots of remixes and re-releases of the Atari 2600 in various forms. More recently, it's been very popular with the NES and the SNES and some of these other old-style computer game systems to be reissued. And finally, Atari is jumping on the bandwagon. However, unlike those other systems, the 2600, in my opinion, the 2600 Plus, in my opinion, is a faithful recreation of the original 2600. So let's talk a little about that. The original Atari 2600 was released in 1977, as I mentioned in the intro. It used 2 KB cartridges, so unlike some of the older systems that used discs, first CDs, then DVDs, the 2600 series and some of the other Atari successors used cartridges, so these cartridges would go in. And the cool thing about the 2600 Plus, if you still have your original game cartridges, guess what? They just go right in and they're ready to play. It's that simple. That's one of the really cool things about the 2600 Plus. So, released in 1977, was rebranded in 1982 as the Atari 2600 video computer system, and then continued on a run until January 1st, 1992. So that's a nice 15-year run for the 2600, so nice long life. And if we look at these two machines, again, they look very similar to the front, but along the back of the original machine, you have your 2 game controller ports, so left and right game controllers. You have power. Back then, you had to select which channel on your CRT TV. I don't know if you can see that in there. You wanted to use the Atari with, so it was usually channel 2 or 3. And then we have the difficulty mode, this difficulty switch here, 1 and 2. That used to be one of these spring-loaded switches on the original. And then we have another difficulty for the left player. So those are the 2 switches that used to be these spring-loaded switches and now are just toggle switches. And then attached to the 2600 is the cable that would run to your TV. Now, on the 2600 Plus, not a lot of people have CRT TVs anymore. So to get around that fact, the 2600 Plus looks a little different. So it still has your left and right controller ports. It still has your difficulty A and B for left and right players, but it has a couple new tricks. So it has an HDMI port that plugs into your TV, and this will do upscaling, so it looks correct on your modern TV. So it does some stretching and bending and upscaling and all that sort of stuff. So it does look very good on your TV. And it is powered by USB-C. Now, when you buy 2600, it comes with an HDMI cable and it comes with a USB-C power cable, but you have to supply your own brick. Be an Apple nerd with a bunch of stuff that uses USB-C now from Macintosh and iPhone, iPad, and what have you. It wasn't too hard to find a USB-C charge brick. However, I went into my bag of tricks and I dug out an old Amazon something or other black brick, and it works just fine. Okay, so let's talk about why I have, in 2023, the tail end of 2023, an Atari 2600 and an Atari 2600 Plus. Well, the Atari 2600 Plus that I originally had as a kid, again, looked exactly like the 2600 Plus on the right. But my 2600, I played it as a kid, played a lot of Pac-Man with it, Space Invaders, the whole bit. And it broke. And my parents had it repaired, and I played it some more Pac-Man, more Space Invaders, more stuff. It broke again. And at that point, well, it was time to move on. Interestingly, fun fact, I moved on to the Apple II, specifically, in my case, the Apple IIe. Well, fun fact, the Atari 2600, which shipped in 1977, had a MOS Technologies 6502 processor, 6502, the same CPU that was being used in the Apple II, then the II Plus, and the IIe. Very unique sort of trivia that I started in with computers and what have you by playing video games on the 2600, which led to the Apple IIe, which had the same CPU, an Apple product, and then sort of the rest is kind of history. But anyway, that's all sort of Allen trivia. This replacement unit, which was given to me as a gift many, many years later, worked. I had it plugged into a spare TV we had, and we had an elderly pet that soiled on the box that this thing was sitting in. And pretty much that soaked box was taken and chucked, and we kind of dried this thing off and chucked it in the basement and left it for dead, basically. So while I was out Christmas shopping for the kids, I saw this on sale. They were out of stock at Target and all sorts of places, but Atari.com had them, and the Atari 2600 Plus can be purchased for $129, $130, rounding up, and had all these benefits that it, was USB-C powered and has an HDMI port, and you can do things like HDMI output on the Atari 2600. If you follow Big Bad Biologist here on YouTube, he recently did a mod that gets the older style video out into his TV, so you can kind of do that. But it involves drilling and all this other stuff, and I just did not want to do that. And so for $130, just throw some money at it, you get the 2600 Plus. Now, I wouldn't have even bothered with the 2600 Plus because unlike some of these other prepackaged game consoles, the 2600 only comes with its own bundled cart, right? So it ships with this cartridge. It's got 10 games on it, and it's controlled by dip switch on the back. You toggle some dip switches, and you get these various games. Here are all the dip switch settings for the games. So that's kind of cool and all. So if you don't have any games, you can play a couple of these games, right? Adventure, Combat, Dodge 'em, Haunted House, Maze Craze, Missile Command, which even in this, I turn 50 soon. Even now, playing Missile Command still gives me the stress, cases of the stressies, right? Trying to save my cities from being destroyed by missiles. But anyway, that's a whole different thing. Real Sports Volleyball, who doesn't like volleyball? Surround, Video Pinball, and Yar's Revenge. So those are some cool games. So if you don't have an Atari 2600 or you have one as a kid but don't have the games, this can get you started. Now, it turns out you can buy new games and collector special edition versions of some of the older games. But as you may have figured out, I still have all of my original cartridges. For some crazy reason, throughout the years, I kept my Atari cartridges and my Apple IIe discware floppies. I don't know. Strange things have happened. So, I assumed that I had a dead 2600. I have all of these cartridges for, the 2600 that I could use. Some more cartridges. Who doesn't like Donkey Kong? Yo Joe. And so I had all these cartridges available that all, interesting enough, all still work. Early 1980s, 1981, 92, 83, 84, all of these cartridges here still work on the 2600 Plus. I even had my original controller. The 2600 Plus comes with a controller, the regular joystick, but if you want, you can also buy paddles for games like Indy 500, which require paddles, and a couple of games like Brickout or something like that require the paddles. So if you have them, you can use them. If you don't have them, you can buy them. And if they're sold out on Atari.com like the paddles are right now, you can get them really cheap on eBay for right now. So on eBay, I may have accidentally purchased some extra cartridges. These are like $5-6 plus shipping. So for like $10 out the door shipping, you can get some more games. I got 3 of these from the same seller, so $15 plus $5 shipping, another $2 plus $4 or $5 shipping. So you can go as crazy as you want with all of this stuff. So I had these cartridges and I wanted to play, and I had the 2600 Plus, and there you go, right? This thing couldn't possibly work at the end of 2023 after it was soiled by pets 3 years ago. Elderly pet that eventually, unfortunately, passed. Could not possibly work, or could it? So while I was digging around in my stuff and getting my second controller out and everything, I said, what the heck? Let's plug this in and see if it works. And it freaking works. Like, it's 1982 purchase type, run to now, the end of 2023, it works. So let's put these things up head to head and let's take a look at what it looks like on a flat screen TV in 2023. Okay, before we get to some play testing, I want to talk a little about the original 2600. This particular model ends up in what I call, an RCA type jack. You might see these on modern, camcorders or other media players like a DVD player or something like that, where you have the yellow, red, and white cables, but this is just one. Everything's going through this one cable, right? There's no really left or right. It's just the video and the audio, and it goes out to the TV. On the original units, there was a little toggle box. I'll see if I can find a picture of it. Maybe I'll just stick it in the frame right here, where this would plug into the bottom of it, and then you would screw the thing into either like the RCA jack, excuse me, the coax jack on the back of your TV, or if you had rabbit ear TV or something like that, you would have these two little prongs you would screw in and all that sort of stuff. But to get this working on this unit that I had gotten maybe, 7 to 10 years ago, it's this RCA style connector, and they include in the box a RCA, it's the white ring here, to a coaxial connector, right? So this is going to plug into the back of your TV, just like maybe your cable box would or something like that. So this is how I'm going to connect this original run 2600 to my very old non-smart Philips TV. So let's go ahead and get that set up, and then we'll take a look at what the original 2600 looks like on the screen. All right, and for this demo, we're going to use, we're going to start off with Donkey Kong. The Atari 2600, there is no frills. This is a no-frills 8-bit gaming system. So there's no music. I shouldn't get any copyright hits or anything like that here on YouTube. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at Donkey Kong first. Then we'll switch over to Pac-Man on the original 2600. And then we'll kick it over to those two games on the 2600 Plus, and you can kind of see how it looks. So there it is. There's the Atari 2600 in all of its 8-bit RCA to coaxial adapter glory, and that looks all of the 1970s that's possible. So let's go ahead and we'll hit the oh, here's the joystick. Just a, 1, 2, 3, 4, up, down, left, right kind of adapter, one fire button. Super simple, not like today's video game controllers with shoulder buttons and D-pads and all that stuff. So gaming in 1977, 1982, super simple. So let's go ahead and hit the fire button and let's play a round of Donkey Kong. Can Mario make it to the top? Can he get Princess Peach, or whoever the character was back then, to safety? This is very exciting. So this is the one of 2 levels that we'll see in the game. Here is the second. I guess those are supposed to be flames from the oil barrels, but I always call them flaming chickens. I don't know. Maybe you called them something else. But let's see if I can get to the top of the map. You have to get these little pegs out while not getting flamed. Okay, not too bad, not too bad. Okay. So that is Donkey Kong. So that's Donkey Kong right there. There's Mario of Mario and Luigi fame, and I don't remember who that is. That's Princess Peach or somebody. I don't know. But you get the idea. And that cartridge comes out. And let's put in where I moved it. I lost it already. Let's put in Pac-Man. Now, Pac-Man was the thing. Now, the Atari 2600 that I bought, and that my parents bought with the money I had saved or whatever, let's go with that, came with Combat. That was the 4-in-1 game of tanks and biplanes and jets and everything else. But it was Pac-Man that was like super big in the early 1980s, and later editions of the 2600 came pre-bundled with Pac-Man. So if you have the original Pac-Man cartridge, you can play it on 2600, but the Pac-Man game, probably due to licensing issues, is currently not available for purchase in 2023. So off to eBay you go if you don't have your original Pac-Man cartridge. But here's Pac-Man. Oh my God. This was controversial back in the day because it did not look like any of the other game systems. This didn't look like the arcade version of Pac-Man. But 8-year-old Alan didn't really care because I was playing Pac-Man in my family room. And I don't know if my dad just let me win or he was really bad. I'm not sure. It's probably the first thing, that I was really bad and he just let me win. But that's Pac-Man, and it's just more of the same. And this looks pretty bad. Like, I didn't think Donkey Kong looked that bad, but seeing this on the original 2600 and how that's working, the background colors are all wrong, and it's just yuck. So let's go ahead and let's get the 2600 up on the TV stand. And just to recap very quickly, so the Atari 2600 does come with an HDMI cable, which I have plugged into the TV at the moment. It also does come with a power cable. So you've got this USB-A. Not sure why we're using USB-A in the end of 2023, but a USB-A to USB-C cable, which is even really weird. So depending on what you've got going on at your place or what cables and spares you have, you may have USB-C to USB-C charge brick. But like I said earlier on, I had this nondescript cheapo Amazon adapter from an Echo something tablet. Who knows? I don't really even remember. But if it fits, we're good. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, and we'll get the 2600 up on the TV. Okay, 2600 in. It does give you this Atari splash screen you can see here. And then you get a loading game, so you know, obviously, we're running in emulation mode. Okay, so now we have Donkey Kong, and now we see that it's formatted for the widescreen TV. The colors look a little better. Let's go ahead and start the game by hitting the fire button. And here we go. So, in my opinion, these graphics look a little crisper, a little clearer. They're still Atari 2600 graphics and all their cheesy, non-arcade cabinet, first generation at-home, video game glory. And I wouldn't have it any other way. If I'm going to play, it's got to look like this. So here, looking at this level here, I think the blues look a lot more vibrant. Donkey Kong still looks like a brown blob up there in the corner, but he looks more like a brown blob than he did before. And yeah, Mario is still Mario. Let's see if I can somehow beat this level. I am using the new joystick. It looks almost identical to the original joystick. There's only a couple telltale differences. There are no screw holes in the bottom. So in the original one, there's the 4 feet, and then you have screw holes. On the new one, the screw holes are concealed by the feet. And then the shape of the trigger button here is slightly different, and there's a slightly different shade of orange between the two. All right, now I got the hammer. We got to wait for the hammer to go away. I never understood why you would use the hammer. I mean, you can get the chicken, flaming chicken, as I mentioned before, but you can't go up or downstairs while you have the hammer. So I'm not really sure why you have it. So one more flaming chicken, jump over the breakpoint, and that's it. There's no cutscene. Donkey Kong doesn't climb up to the next layer of the building. But yeah, again, this looks, I think, in my opinion, a lot more crisp than the original 2600 does on a modern flat screen TV. Okay, we're switching over to Pac-Man now. Again, this is the same Pac-Man cartridge we were just playing. Again, we see the loading game, which tells you we are emulating the Atari platform. And here we are, 1981 Pac-Man. It still looks atrocious, but I think the colors look a lot better now. And we have no sound. I don't know why we don't have sound. Let's go find out. Take the cartridge out, reseat it, turn it on. When in doubt, reboot, and then try it now. Who knows? This is a really old game cartridge. There we go. See my TV readjusting to fill in. This TV is, I think, 2007, so it's not a current TV. I want to say it's 720p currently right now, but it gets the job done. And I think, again, this version of Pac-Man with the 2600 plus, reconfigured to take advantage of modern TVs, I think these colors look much better and more accurately represent what it would look like on the CRT TV that my parents had back in the 80s. So hey, yeah, there's Pac-Man. Love it or hate it. It doesn't look anything like it did in the arcade, and lots of people complained about it. That piece of gum, or whatever you want to call it, was the thing that appeared in place of fruit, or what have you. But hey, that's what the Atari 7800 is all about. Now, one thing I do want to mention is Activision. Yes, that Activision, as an Activision Blizzard, soon to be of Microsoft fame, they had some games out for the Atari 2600. And I've got 3 of my original cartridges here. I got Sequest, River Raid, and Mega Mania. Mega Mania was a favorite along with River Raid. Sequest, was a later game. It was pretty cool. But here's the thing, right? Some of these cartridges need a little TLC before they worked in the 2600 plus. And let me show you why. if you look at the original Atari cartridge, it's got a sealed container, right? There's a little slot for the fingers that go into the cartridge slot on the 2600 or the 2600 Plus, and that's, it's pretty sealed up. On the Activision cartridges, while their graphics and games looked a little better and were a little more in-depth than maybe just running around and, eating dots or smashing the fire button, on the Activision cartridges, that's the circuit board right there. And while it's hard to see on camera here, they're gold fingers right on that PCB board there. So it gets dusty and cruddy. So a bunch of my original Activision games didn't work. And to get them to work, I did something, well, in the retro community is not unusual. I got a little isopropyl alcohol. Now I have 70% on hand. Lots of folks in the retro community like to use 90% isopropyl alcohol, what have you. But I just took a Q-tip with some isopropyl alcohol on it, and I basically just rubbed the gold contacts on the bottom and the top and let it dry out for a minute or two, and then plugged it into the Atari 2600, and it was good to go. Like, that was it. It just needed a little bit of a cleaning, and it was ready to go. So what I'd like to do on this video before we end is I got a new, to me, Activision game. I think it was $2 on eBay. It's in pretty good condition. I mean, the label's a little beat, but, hey, this is a pretty old cartridge, right? This is from, let's see here, 1982. So it can be allowed to be a little beat up. But there's some dust in here, so we're going to try it out and see if it works. And if it doesn't, we'll do a quick cleaning, and we'll see how it goes from there. So we'll load it in, make sure it's fully seated, hit the power button. Let's see what we get. Okay, the Atari logo screen shows up. I've got the audio muted at the moment. Okay, so loading game failed. This is what happens when you can't read a cartridge for whatever reason. And while I had the camera off, the game just loaded, like on the third or fourth try. So I've got a big, gigantic bottle of isopropyl alcohol here and a cotton swab. Let's go ahead and do the cleaning on the cartridge, and let's just see if we can get it to load on the first try instead of like the third or fourth try. All right, so we'll turn off the Atari, pull the cartridge out. Get a little bit of isopropanol alcohol on here, and we're just going to go in and very sort of gently go ahead and get those gold finger contacts in here and just kind of rub it off. There's a lot of dust in here. I'll go into the bottom of the cartridge and just clean that up so none of this debris actually gets into the console itself. This is very exciting content, I know. Most of you are gone to sleep. Retro nerds are probably screaming at the screen because I'm using 70% IPA instead of did I say IPA? Isopropyl alcohol. I guess, yeah, I guess that could be IPA. Well, it's not beer. Let's go with that. And so yeah, there's a little bit of gunk on there. You can see. So yeah, a little dirty, dusty in there. So we'll give this a minute to dry out, and then we'll pop it in, and we'll see if that works any better. All right. So just make sure that there's no fuzz or anything else in there from the cotton bud, the Q-tip, and let's try it now. So we'll go ahead, make sure it's seated, give it a couple inserts and outs to make sure it's good. Now, I do have deoxit on hand. I was going to deoxit the thing originally, but it looks like the isopropanol alcohol did the trick. Loading game. Survey said. Oh boy. All right, a little bit of a jump cut there. I went ahead and cleaned this again off camera so I can just make sure I can, see in there and get the heads cleaned again. So let's try this again and see if we have any better results. All right, we're booting up. Looks good. Okay, we're loading the cartridge. We see it's version 1, which makes me think that at some point we might get a newer version of something. And yeah, looks like this cartridge is just going to give me all sorts of problems. Just for fun, let's go ahead and try another cartridge, which I know is working, and I was playing it earlier today. Yeah, there we go. So Sequest came right up. Again, I have the volume muted, but you can see, in my opinion, these graphics look a lot better than the Atari graphics did. I mean, they're still working with the same constraints, but whatever magic Activision was doing, their games looked and played a little bit better than the Atari version. And yeah, this is the early 80s. There was no story or mythology that went along with these things. It was just some guys in a sub trying to save their buddies from sharks and enemy submarines. So yeah, that's the Atari 2600. So I hope you've enjoyed this quick review of the Atari 2600 and the Atari 2600 Plus from 2023. I've had a lot of fun reliving my youth, playing some of these old video games, 8-bit games. They're fantastic. The Atari 2600 really pulls on the nostalgia string. That is really sort of its thing, right? I mean, you can run these on emulators. You can get some of these games in other forms. You can go ahead and buy different pre-bundled Atari packages that kind of look like the 2600 but have some pre-bundled games. There's all sorts of things you can do, but for me, this really is the full tea party. It's the console that's just about the same size, looks and feels the same way it does. It uses the same controllers that I did as a kid. The controllers make the same sounds when you're playing. It looks great on modern TVs, and again, if you have your cartridges, you can still use that back catalog on the Atari 2600 Plus. So until next time, thanks for watching. Just goes to show, if you wait 12 hours from filming, that your 41-year-old game cartridge that will not cooperate on camera does in fact work. The nostalgia, I can't even say that right. The 2600 Plus really pulls on the nostalgia.